we actually live in a under a new religion. Like if you look at kind of the bad times in history when we married politics and religion, those often went the wrong way, and it would end up being that the state was implementing the religion. And I think many of these businesses, even what we saw with COVID, different but same ideology, which is the state should control things. The government is in charge of your kids more than you are. Like it's this crazy communism. It's essentially communism that's seeped in, and I think people are afraid of pissing off let's call them the Red Guard, for lack of a better word. We can call them the Rainbow Guard, whatever you want to call them, pissing off these activists who will try to cancel them and destroy their lives.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News. I am now joined by David Parker, the founder of Take Back Alberta, to discuss a little bit of cancel culture. And on this case, we're talking about the cancellation of, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 2 event spaces plus Eventbrite itself?
Yes. So basically what happened was we've invited Dr. James Lindsay to come up to Alberta and talk about the Marxification of our schools. Mm-hmm. Basically, we called the event Protect Our Kids, and he tweeted it out, the poster that we created for it with, some links on it. Right. And it went viral. Actually, I think over 1 million people saw it on Twitter, or impressions. And immediately the next day, both venues called us and said that they didn't want to have us anymore. One was a church, which is kind of a really depressing statement on our society. Mm-hmm. But we've seen that through COVID. It's not a surprise that certain Christian leaders are not standing up and willing to oppose this madness that's going on. But then, as things blew up and it got bigger, Eventbrite actually canceled our event and refunded the 200 people who'd bought tickets up to that point. So now we have a venue booked in Edmonton. We'll announce that soon, but we don't want them to get harassed till we have the contract signed and everything. Yeah. And we have 3 potential venues now in Calgary. But the Eventbrite one was not a surprise, actually, in retrospect, because if you go into the back end of Eventbrite, the Southern Poverty Law Center is a big proponent and backer, and they, label if you're not right-wing and not labeled a hate group.
Just for folks out there who maybe don't know Dr. James Lindsay, can you talk a little bit about his work and perhaps why he might be a bit of a contentious figure?
So Dr. James Lindsay is a doctor, he has a PhD in mathematics, and then he actually spent 10 years becoming a massage therapist. Like, he was a massage therapist for 10 years. But what he's most famous for, you've probably all heard of, is he wrote 7 academic articles, the most famous one being, "Are dog parks actually sexist or racist?" I believe it's racist. Are they actually racist? And he got them published with phony data and everything. And that showed that the academic journal space has been captured by this woke ideology. You get things published that aren't even, they're peer reviewed apparently, but they're not true at all. They're just totally made up. And he proved that by having them made up. Then he started a podcast. It's called New Discourses. He's also been on Joe Rogan 3 times, and he was on Jordan Peterson recently. Now he's got a big Twitter following, but what he's most famous for now is basically he's written a number of books, but he is the man who's read all of this material. Mm-hmm. Like, people like you and I and a lot of people listening, we don't have time to read all of the academic writings of people who think, there's sexism behind every tree, and, we're inherently all evil in the sense of, like, we all hate one another, all these things. We are inherently sinful. We all know this, but we're not inherently racist. That's a very different thing. But that's what's being pushed by this agenda. And he's done all the reading on this racist material, all the academic literature, not all of it, but much of it. Yeah. And he's able to distill it and express it. And he's becoming very articulate on that. And he's begun traveling all over America, teaching people what this woke religion that's taken over our institutions is and how we can fight back.
I'm famously known for being against woke culture. Turns out I was involved in the grievance studies affair a number of years ago, in which I revealed that woke scholarship is in fact fraudulent. I wrote a book in which I defined critical race theory as calling everything you wish to control racist until you control it. I'm at the center of identifying the sexualization of children through queer theory as groomer behavior. And while I was in London a couple of days ago, I might have visited Karl Marx's grave and danced on it.
Now, certainly there's definitely a lot of concern. Culture, whether we like it or not, does follow academics, but this is also sort of in the main sphere, whether it be public policy, whether it be media, academics, as we already talked about. What's sort of Take Back Alberta's connection to this? Why is this an Albertan story, and why did you decide to bring him here to this province?
Okay, well, the first thing is we brought Jordan Peterson in to talk about getting involved in your democracy, and it's all about getting involved in your democracy. That's what Take Back Alberta is about, and our big project that we're going to be working on over the next 2 years is the school boards. I talked about that on Jesperson. I talk about that at my meetings. We need to get more people elected to the school boards if we want to have parents to have more of a say in their children's education. And we've seen the effectiveness that Take Back Alberta can have on the provincial party level and on the provincial election level. Now we're moving down into the weeds, into local politics where decision making happens. And what we've asked this expert, this global expert on what's happening in our schools, to come and explain in clear language, articulate what's going on, because I think until people truly understand the problem, they're not necessarily going to buy into the solution. But he is probably the best person that I've encountered at articulating the problem.
So I guess my next question for you, you could have a bunch of people who are doing these transitioning minors, cutting off their breasts,
Yes.
cutting off their genitals. You could clearly have a conference with them at any venue.
Yes.
Fundraise or sell tickets on Eventbrite. There'd never be any issues at all. But if you have someone come in maybe suggesting what everybody believed 15 years ago unanimously, that is now cancelable. How far have we gone in society?
Oh, we've crumbled. The morals of our society is crumbling. We don't have a shared narrative anymore. And now we're in a post-truth world. That's the real problem, is we have one of the biggest documentaries in history of the world by Matt Walsh, What is a Woman? He has to go around asking people what a woman is. Anybody actually knows what a woman is. You know what a woman is. I know what a woman is. Growing up, that was never a question. We weren't wondering about whether someone was a man or a woman. You were either a man or a woman. Yeah. And that's been taken from us. I mean, we are in bad shape, but I think a lot of people still think the same way they did 15 years ago. It's just that the propaganda has been pushed so hard and they've taken over so many of our institutions that they're now making it dangerous to think what was normal 15 years ago. And my answer to that is we have to stand up. We've got to get involved.
And that certainly is a major concern. Like, so many people don't believe this, understand it's not true. When push comes to shove, maybe over coffee or beers, they're like, well, no. But almost everyone will go along with this. Peer pressure, media pressure, I get it, whatever it is. I understand the ideologues pushing this stuff, having tantrums when things don't go their way. But why on earth are like purportedly serious businesses, places whose business is to sell venue space or to sell tickets, like Eventbrite, whatever it may be, why are they going along with this?
I think because we actually live under a new religion. Like, if you look at kind of the bad times in history when we married politics and religion, those often went the wrong way, and it would end up being that the state was implementing the religion. And I think many of these businesses, even what we saw with COVID, different but same ideology, which is the state should control things. The government is in charge of your kids more than you are. Like, it's this crazy communism. It's essentially communism that's seeped in. And I think people are afraid of pissing off let's call them the Red Guard, for lack of a better word. We can call them the Rainbow Guard, whatever you want to call them, pissing off these activists who will try to cancel them and destroy their lives.
Whatever you want to call these comrades. Do you get the sense, I mean, often the sort of like vitriolic lashing out, the name calling we're seeing now, it sort of reminds me of like an animal in a trap thrashing. Like, they're sensing the tide is changing. They know that the average person, whether it's Muslims, Christians, freedom fighters, protesters, it doesn't matter. They're coming out and gathering now saying, no. Like, you can live your life, but stop pushing this on our kids. Leave our kids alone is the sentiment we hear over and over again. Do you think the tide is changing, or do you think that they feel as affirmed as ever, and that's why they're being brash?
Oh, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. They are being pushed back. The people are waking up to the realization that their society's been captured by these ideologues. And the beauty of, I think, what's happening in the world right now is we have parents getting involved. We have people. We're going to have an annual general meeting for the United Conservative Party. And I've been to a lot of these annual general meetings. They just had one in Quebec City. You don't usually see more than 3,000-4,000 people. I think we're going to see. We only saw 1,800 last time, even though we just had a leadership race. People are so apathetic. I think we're going to double the number. I think you're going to see I think people are getting involved. I think you're seeing it on the school board level, and people are starting to lash out, right? There's Monique LaGrange up in Red Deer County is being attacked right now for sharing a meme. They're trying to cancel her and destroy her her long history of service
Yeah.
and being a activist. They're trying to destroy that because they're targeting people. But if we stand together and we keep marching forward, I don't think there's any way we can lose.
Yeah, I think that you're also seeing, even we saw a little bit of a kickback, whether even in country music, people were starting to push stuff, and now all the country music that's taking off.
Stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. Well, try that in a small town.
You saw it with Bud, you saw it with Target. It's just across the board, there seems to be a shift. Now, getting back to the actual event cancellation, you talked about how you guys are planning to go full steam ahead, but are the sort of terms and conditions, do they cover them? So despite the fact we know this is wrong, are they just going to get away with canceling?
I mean, there's not a lot we can do because in the time we would need to fight them, we need to get ready for this event and have James Lindsay come.
Right.
So we may pursue something afterwards, but I think for now, it's the important thing is making sure that he's able to speak to people and get his message across, which is really a very simple message, which is we've got to stop this destruction and attack on the family. That's ultimately what this is. The idea that parents don't love their children as much as teachers. What a ludicrous idea. Yeah. I've never met a teacher that loves like children, an individual child more than a parent should and almost always does. Now there might be exceptions to both of those rules, but that's why they're exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
They prove the rule, and the rule is this, that children are loved most in the world by their parents almost universally. And anyone who's attacking that family unit, saying that children shouldn't tell their parents things about themselves or that parents shouldn't know things about their children, is attacking the foundational building block of Western civilization.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can come out to the event, cover it, share some of these
Absolutely.
details with
Yes,
everybody.
definitely come.
Any sort of final words for folks out there?
Please consider going on takingbackalberta.ca and buying tickets. It's under the event button. And we do have tickets for James Lindsay for both Edmonton and Calgary. Edmonton on October 2nd and Calgary on October 3rd. We don't have the venue for Calgary yet, but if you buy the ticket, I can promise you, I've worked in politics a long time. I know how to harass people to tell them that where something's going to be, like a voting location, for example. We will tell you where the event's going to be. If it's in a field with heaters and a tent, we're going to do this. So it's going to happen.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
As always, everyone at home, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. Well, folks across this country, they're getting sick and tired of radical agendas being pushed in schools. They are protesting, gathering, and organizing en masse, and we're covering all of those stories. You can check them out at stopclassroomgrooming.com.